the first thing that I think that we need to discuss is how it works and what happens inside CorelDRAW when you do try something. So I've just prepared a few images, and I think on this one is the first one that I want to show you. So if you click on the trace bitmap, I normally use the trace outline and I say high quality image. So what happens is it looks for contrasting colors and it creates the lines accordingly. So you'll get a preset of the detail, the smoothing, the corner smoothness. That normally is quite good, and you might want to adjust it a little bit, but I normally leave it as it is. I just want to untick that. So if we do that cut or that trace, we move it out, you'll see where it traced and drew the line. So if I take away the color and I show the outline, that's where it saw the contrast of those three colors. It's just the red fading into a blue, fading into a black. So if we do that again and we do the same thing and we change the detail on that, what happens is there's a lower tolerance of detail that it looks for in the contrasting lines. So if we take it down to, say, 49, 50%, and we do the trace, and I'll just move it over to the next one again, and we look at that, we have less lines there, so it's a lower tolerance. It's just something to keep in mind to know how it works. And just to show a little bit more on that, so I created this image. It's a bitmap as well. It's basically this image, just with 8 colors in. I purposely made the yellows very close to each other, and here we have like a vignette blue going into a green. So if we do the same on this one, we do an outline trace. I just want to turn that off again. So it shows the colors, and when you click on the colors, it shows 42 colors. It shows those 7 colors and the balance in there. Again, if we bring the tolerance down, it starts breaking up those colors into less. And you'll see we now have 26 colors. If we bring it down a little bit more, eventually it'll see this yellow as one color and it won't distinguish. I see it's actually still holding it, but it broke this down into only 2 colors. So if you click on the amount of colors there, we have 9, and these are the colors that are represented there. And if we go down even further, on that setting, it made that one color. So if we do trace it there, and we move the trace over, and we look at that, it made the yellow a single color. If we go even further down, it will most probably see these blues as a single color as well. We can have a quick look at that. And that's probably too far down. Change that. So there, eventually it brings them all close to each other, which is all the blues. So that is the detail explained in a nutshell. Is it reduces the tolerance where it looks at to change the lines. And this image I prepared just to show you the other option on the settings, the smoothing. So this is just one color. And if we zoom in over there, by default, it looks pretty good. If we turn the smoothing down, and if we go all the way down, it'll look very much the same as that. That is a raster image, which will be made up of the colors as it is there. It's not a vector, hence the reason we're tracing it. So you'll see the jagged effect that we're getting there. So the smoothing will try and make it into a line what the program thinks you want to have. And as you take that up, it'll go sharper and sharper. But if you get to a certain point, you start losing the detail completely. And if you smooth it all the way, you'll end up with just a round image. So that just in a nutshell, how those settings work and what is the effect when you do that. Any questions on that before we go on to the two images?
Carlo, not a question. Maybe if you can just show everybody, because now you're using the little your menu for the tracing. I normally right click and go from there. Maybe just to show people how they can do the alternative.
I never used the alternative.
Right click and then outline tracing, and it's got the same menus as you have up there. I normally do that because I lose my toolbars sometimes. I'm too lazy to put them back.
To be honest, I haven't looked at any other options. I'm so used to using this one, but I'm gonna look into that, no doubt. All right, so let's look at these two. Getting to the tracing now. Something that I probably want to say is the tracing. I try not to take anybody else's artwork and trace it and use it. Both of these were sent to me by a client and we needed to do some work on it. They didn't have any vector artwork. This is all they had. In actual fact, this specific one was a picture they took from a licensed disc holder, it seems, with a cell phone, and they sent it via WhatsApp. And that's what we had to work with. So we had to make that work. And if you just trace that on its own, it's not a workable file. So I'm going to show you the way that I go about this. If any of you have any other methods and ways of doing this, please share that with us. As we said, this is a discussion group. So I hope you learned something about it, but if we can as well, that'll be great. So the first thing I do, I look at my image size, and this is about 90 by 80. And I set my nudge factor at about 150. It must just be bigger than that, so that when I do tracing and I use my arrow, or I copy and paste it, that's normally the first thing I do. I move it out, I work on that one. And everything that I move with my cursor arrows. So I know always where they are, I can get them back on top of each other. And you'll see why that helps as we go along. So if we trace this one as it is, just do a trace, move it over, and have a look at the line work. You're going to struggle to work with that file. So that's not going to be the easiest file. I think what we can do is I can trace it and just leave it as a sample over there. So what we can do from our side is to increase the contrast of this image. If we increase the contrast, we give CorelDRAW a better chance of giving us a better image when we do the cropping. So to do that, I go to the bitmap and I convert this to grayscale. You can take the resolution up to about 300, but it's going to reduce it again in any case when you do the tracing. So once we've converted that, already CorelDRAW will be better at doing the tracing. But the next one is where we really change it up and give it a better chance. So the contrast enhancement, I'm not sure when this came into CorelDRAW, and I'm not sure if they're all at the same, but I know some of the earlier versions do have this. They might be in a different place on the menu. So if we open that up, I think I'm just going to zoom into this image a little bit more. And I'm going to move it to the side. So when I open that up, mine goes to default there, but it normally looks like that. So that's what the image looks like before you start. So these two sliders at the top, the one on the right, if you move that to the left, you'll find that the lighter colors go lighter. And you can move it ever so slightly as you go along. And on this side, the darker colors becomes more intense. And you can move that up a little bit again as you go along. And as you go, the white just becomes, or the lighter colors just become more clean. It cleans it up. And I think that doesn't look too bad. So we can have a look at that. Now do an outline trace. So I see we're missing the 1D there. So we can go back and reduce that a little bit. Can adjust the detail maybe to the other side. It's not bringing that in. Let me just set these two back to where they should be. I think I can come a little bit back. So there will be a stage where if you go too far, it overexposes. And obviously that's not what you want. So you need to find the sweet spot. There's no perfect recipe for it. You got to feel it and work with it as you go along. So we can have a look at that. Trace that one. And we're still missing the D, but I'm not going to be too concerned about that. So if I go to my colors now, I only need the black and white. I don't need all the colors that we have got there. So I can go to the black and white on my settings. Don't want to change anything there. I can take that over, and that is not a bad file to work off, in actual fact. So to do that D, I can go up and down and try and change the settings and get something to work with the whole image. But instead of that, I can change this. I can crop out just the D. Sorry, that one is not going to crop out from there. Just going to move it out of the way. Make a copy of that. And now I can do the same thing with the D as what I did with everything else. So I can convert that to a bitmap, to grayscale, and go to the effects, do the contrast enhancement on that again. Let me just get that back to the defaults. Let's say to that. Yeah, I'm still getting the same.
Carlo, try drop your smoothing to 5%, see what that does.
Good. When I took the detail up now, at least I got it back. So I think the smoothing can come up a little bit, but I'm not too concerned about that at this stage. So if I go to my colors and we go to black and white, so there I've got a nice image to work with. And because I'm using the nudge factor, I didn't change the value, move it over, and it's in the right spot. And now it's just a matter of cleaning up the parts like that. So in this instance, on this one that we had, there was no way that I could get that Patstal and what was it? Patstal and bar. To get that text to copy, but it was easy enough to find that font or a close enough font and type the font in. And this was the overall result that we got doing it this method off of that. And zooming into that, that was a perfect. The client was very happy. That was quite a nice result. One of the things you have to ask yourself before you start with any trace, and it also has to do with the costing and what you charging the client, is how much time are you willing to spend on tracing the image and preparing your artwork. If it's not something big or something crucial, probably not the right terminology, but you got to find the midpoint of how much time you're going to spend on it, and is it worth it? Can you quote accordingly?
Well, I just wanted to say you're 100% right that 80% of the tracing work actually happens on the image before you start any tracing. It's just preparing that image so that your eyes could see what the laser has to see at the end of the day. And even if you're using online programs and stuff, if you prepare your image well, that AI or whatever you're using will work better. But you need to understand what you're teaching you about adjusting that contrast and the brightness and the sharpness. Otherwise, you'll never ever get it right.
All right, so getting to this one, the nudge factor is very important in this. Like I showed with the logo here, just with a D that we had to take over again. To do this file, we did a bit of tracing of everything, took it over bit by bit, and some of the items or the images we just drew in. Again, the amount of time that you're willing to spend on this and the amount of time that you have and chargeable time that you've got. So again, if we go this one and we go to the tracing, I normally go straight to the black and white. It doesn't really give you much. So there's not much to work off there. So we go through the same on this one. I normally make a copy and paste the copy. Go to the bitmap, convert. Over here, you got the options for black and white, color, grayscale. I normally use the grayscale. And the important one, adjusting the contrast enhancement. And again, they default in the outer corners. So that's what the image looks like. So on this one, if I darken the lighter areas there, or the dark areas, and lighten the lighter areas, it does get a little bit better. But it's difficult to find the sweet spot, because if I go any further on this, the line on the face starts to overexpose and disappear, although this becomes nicer and more workable. So if we decide not to work with the face at this stage, and we look for some detail in there, we can pull it up, let's say, to about there. And we're going to do our trace. Go to the black and white only. Go over. We got some that one can use. I suppose we could use that area. And when we get there, you can isolate that. And I'll just take all of this away. And because I'm using the nudge factor as it is, that will stay there. And if I do the next part, I can take that away. Make a copy, paste it there again. And just for the sake of the video, I'm gonna erase some of that, so we don't need that, and we don't need the program to process that. If we want to do the face, we can even take some of this. Well, that was a little bit too much. Take some of that away. You can bring this up actually a little bit more. Yeah, that seems a bit better. So now we got the line there. I'm not too concerned about the rest. Go to the black line, move that over, go to the outlines. So for this one, I just wanted to get that nice. And that is in proportion in the correct place to that. And all these parts can be brought over and done one at a time. On this particular one, even the eye was done on its own to make sure I can get it nice and crisp and bring it over. The same with the earrings, and all of these were brought in bit by bit. So to clean that up, what I did over here was basically just close that up. This part I also did on its own, so I can get rid of all of that. Any questions on this so far from anybody?
Maybe just a comment.
Yes.
So there, when you go and you're cleaning up the image and you're isolating parts, as far as I understand, just to maybe try and explain it to other people, is that when you're looking at a big picture like that, the blacks and the whites, there's a lot of them. So the contrast there in the face with the thin lines and light lines is going to be very far down the scale. So when you isolate the picture, you're actually you're giving the computer less information to work with. So it'll see those whites and blacks as whiter and blacker. You'll never basically be able to do it in one shot. Like you say, you'll have to go 2 or 3 or 4 times for the different parts.
Yes, and if you and it's 100% correct. If you try and do that with a thin faint line with a bit of background, and you've got these other colors, the CorelDRAW has to take these colors into consideration. Whereas if you take them away, you can just focus on that and get that as close to what you can for decent trace. So if we do that, copy and paste again, and let's say we want to do this part. I'll erase this again. And you don't need to do them in any particular sequence. If you use your nudge factor, I think I just touched there on that, and you don't change that, you can do any part at any time, move it over, and it will be in the spot where you. Is somebody asking a question, or is it just background?
It was background noise.
Okay. So I'm just going to do the same on this one. Just take it to the defaults. And just increase the contrast on that a little bit. And I'm not too concerned about what happens on the outside. At this stage, I want the inside parts. And if we do the trace on that, and we go to black and white, take it there, and I'll, oops, I got the wrong tool. I can clean up these. And here you're going to have to use the shape tool. On these, I think they are grouped at the moment. You ungroup them all, you can use the shape tool. And we've got double lines. Oops. So you then use the shape tool to fine tune it again as much as you want, or as, again, according to the amount of time that you've got to spend on the image. At the moment, that doesn't look too bad. And if you bring them in bit by bit, eventually it all comes together. Yes, in a nutshell, that is pretty much it. But this is the method that I used to get to that. The last thing that I probably do, and I'll show it on this image, once I've done a trace on, and I do this on every trace that I do, is I use the Smart Fill tool. So on the Smart Fill tool, I'll ensure that I've got a full color selected. I don't need an outline, the full will be fine. And I make sure that I draw a box around the image if there isn't one already. The reason for doing that, if this color leaks out, you basically fill everything on your page, and especially on the older versions and on the older machines, it takes forever to process if it even finishes. So again, still my nudge factor is set on what it was, and I'll fill out everything. Now we've deleted this line, so I'm just going to delete the whole thing quickly. I'll fill everything with a Smart Fill tool. And most of it like that, normally on an image, is pretty much open. And I'm not going to do that wording because we retyped that. So once everything is filled, I'll go to the selection tool again, and I'll just, again with a nudge factor, move them all out, but I will click on it and not select it. The reason why I do that is with the tracing, and I'll show you why now, just now, you sometimes do get double lines if you forget to or do a certain tick, which I forgot about. And this is just my way of making certain that I only have single lines on all of it, on all of the artwork. And if I do it this way, I can see which parts are moved and which I haven't moved yet. It doesn't take that long to do. And I would rather invest the time in doing this than putting it into the machine and some areas engrave and some of them don't, especially if there's double lines that won't engrave. And once you've done that with a Smart Fill tool, you've moved it out of the way, that image is good to go and it will engrave perfectly. That little block, yeah, that won't bother, that'll be in there. So if you do the tracing on this, so you got an option of removing the background color. Now it doesn't know what the background color is, so it presumes it's everything outside because that is closed. Or you can say the color from the entire image, or you can actually specify the color that you want to have removed, and with the eyedropper, you can click on that and it'll remove all of that. There's some gray there. If you want to remove that only, then it'll remove that, but it'll leave the white. As far as I know, Billy, maybe you can just step in here. With this, you can only remove one color. I've never had the need to remove more than one, but in this case, it would have been handy. But
Yeah, you can only remove one color. But what
yes.
I normally do, just as a step to be neat, I just make sure that I always tick the group by colors. Then if you do want to delete something afterwards, because sometimes it only selects the color on the outside and it leaves the white on the
Yes.
inside, it's slightly different. But if you say group by colors, then you don't have to go delete 56 things. You can just click on the one and then delete it.
So if you don't get that setting 100% right, you do sometimes end up with double lines, especially on the inside of the D, the inside of the A, or the inside there. And instead of going to go and look for them and make sure you delete every one of them, I use the Smart Fill tool. I run through the image, because once I do that, I also see what the image is going to look like and what it's going to engrave like. And if there are any other areas of concern, I can maybe just see if I can select that. So that is what I want it to look like based on the other image. But let's say, for argument's sake, there was a mistake there. And you go through the rigmarole of using the Smart Fill tool, you will see that the color is leaked out, and that's not what it's supposed to look like. So that's also a nice check to see if everything is as it should be, because the Smart Fill tool will show you how it's going to engrave. And you don't want that panel to be totally engraved. And then you can zoom in and go and look and find the area which is open. And yeah, that's normally the last bit that I do. And then it is good to go. Any questions up to this stage? Billy, anything you want to add on your side?
You've got to decide if it's a 10 Rand job and you're going to do it in 5 minutes, or if it's a 100 Rand job and you're going to spend 20 minutes, or if it's a 300 Rand job and you're going to spend an hour or two. So you can't be selling one coaster to a customer for 25 Rand and then sitting for an hour drawing something. Then you go for less quality. But if you're doing your best and you want your work to look extra good, then you must be willing to spend the time on the prep work and actually getting that artwork right. There is no proper quick way to get anything looking decent. There's a lot of tips and tricks, but you may have to be willing to put your ass in the chair, finger on the mouse, and do the work.
Yeah, unfortunately, AI is not at that stage where it can create a decent vector for you from something like this. And yeah, and practice, practice, practice. You're never going to get the same result on the same two goes. So you got to get used to it. And the more you do it, the more you'll be able to recognize an image and know how it's going to react when you apply these settings to it. And it'll actually become easier for you to quote on by having a look at the image and knowing how it's going to react and how it's going to trace. So it's definitely worthwhile putting yourself through the paces and do a couple of them and see how it works.
Carlo, do you want to paste one or two of those pictures or something like that? If you're allowed to, into the group chat here, see if you've got some challenges. You can have a little friendly challenge. And if you feel like having a challenge, trace your one in your way or with what you've learned and post them on the group and put the time or whatever that you took, and then we can see if somebody does it in 5 minutes with an excellent job, then we've got to get you here to come and present and teach us. But yeah, some show and tell I think will be great.
What did I miss? Where you say we got a challenge? I love that.
In the chat room.
I call it a challenge.
I need to open up the chat here. Let me find this. It's not open. I can only see the. Oh, well, here we go. There, the chat wasn't open. Oh, okay. I don't want to take up the time looking for the chats and finding them. Billy, read that out to us quickly.
Mind if you send the image in the group and we all try to trace and send it back to the group? Maybe.
Not a
So
problem.
if other looks better, not saying it will look better.
Okay, not a problem. I'll get those two images as I got them. I will paste them on the group, and yes, I would love to see the results. And if you can do a screen record, we don't need to watch it in the whole time. You can always speed it up by 10 or 15 times. Yes, I love that. It'll be quite interesting to see how everybody else goes about it, and what methods you use and what the final result is.
Carlo, my method is 360 degrees to your method.
Really?
Similar in the thinking of, the processing of the of the contrast and the brightness, but I use basically completely different tools than what you're using in Corel to get the same effect. So I'm not going to take up time now, but I'll maybe also take a little video and share my method. And I'm sure there's 15 other methods as well.
And
So
it'll be great to see them all and to see what the guys come up with.
Even if you're tracing manually and you're going to be using your mouse to trace the circle and the dabur and whatever else you're doing, it still helps to do the image work first, get it as contrasted as possible, and then you can manually go and trace with your tablet pen or your mouse or whatever, and you don't have to squint so much, and you're still using the computer to do some of the computing work for you. And then some of those things, sometimes you just have to draw them out manually. You're not going to get the computer to trace that. You've got to then use some human imagination to make up the blanks that the computer can't see. And remember, we're talking about crappy WhatsApp files and stuff. If you get a 20 megabyte photo or something, it's gonna trace wonderfully and beautifully. But if you've got a little 25 kilobyte WhatsApp file, it's a totally different ball game. To try and trace that. A high quality thing, just about anybody can right click trace and it'll give you the result. But the poorer quality, that's where you really have to have your skills built up.
All right. Yeah, Billy, thanks for this initiative. I think we're gonna have some fun going forward in the future as well. The next one, Lena, is she here? Tell us a bit more about what we can expect next week.
Okay, we are going to do a tile, ceramic tile. I'll show you a few examples of what to look out for when engraving it and what will work, what won't. I've learned a lot over the last couple of years, and then just show you how I color fill and paint it.
Lovely, can't wait.
Okay.
Same time, same place next week.
Yeah, so myself and Carlo, we're just going to carry on pushing this thing for a few months and let it grow as far as it will grow. If anybody here wants to come and host a session, even if you want to come and brag, you can trace better. You're also more than welcome. We're both willing to learn, and I think Neil deGrasse Tyson has said that when you get challenged or you actually get proven wrong, that's the greatest moment in your life because you get a chance to get better.
Oh,
so
yes.
That's the kind of attitude that both of us have. So if you've got a better method or something, please come and prove us wrong. I'd love to get better at my craft as well.
Thank you and goodbye, everybody. And I'll post these images on the group and look forward to the results.